So the aim of the EU Deforestation Regulation is to prevent companies from placing on the EU market or exporting products which are not deforestation free or have not been produced in alignment with the laws of the country of production. The EU Deforestation Regulation, actually, it's still going through the legislative process. We expect that the regulation will come into force in the second quarter of 2023, which means that it will become applicable to companies about 18 months after that date, so around the end of 2024. The regulation defines 7 commodities: palm oil, soy, beef or cattle, cocoa, coffee, wood products and rubber. The regulation also defines within those commodities which are the specific scope, products I should say, which are within the scope of the regulation via an annex which includes lists of customs codes. The regulation classifies, if you like, European companies into 2 groups, operators and traders. Operators are those companies or organizations which are placing for the first time on the EU market products within the scope of the regulation. That's either through import or companies which are already based within the EU and placing those products on the first time on the EU market. It also includes companies which export products from the EU. Really the weight of responsibility lies on operators as far as the regulation is concerned. Operators are subject to 2 main requirements of the regulation. Firstly, a prohibition to place on the EU market or export products which are not deforestation free or have not been produced in compliance with the local laws relating to production. They're also required to conduct due diligence, in other words, to evaluate the risks of and address those risks prior to import or export of those products not being deforestation free. The regulation divides due diligence in general into 3 main components: access to information, risk assessment and risk mitigation. So the regulation is quite specific in terms of the type of information that operators need to gather on their supply chains in order to evaluate risks. The purpose of gathering that information is really to inform the risk assessment. The risk assessment, again, it covers 2 areas. Firstly, are the commodities which were used in the production or the manufacture of those products deforestation free, and have they been produced in compliance with local laws? So the term deforestation free, basically it refers to whether the products, whether the commodities were grown on land which was deforested after the 31st of December 2020. A lot of companies are kind of asking themselves that question: what are the first things that we should do? Well, there's a number of sort of very simple things that they can do right now. Companies, firstly, I think, can try to understand, what is their relationship with the regulation? Are they a trader or are they an operator as described within the regulation? And secondly, they can try to understand which are the products that they manufacture or consume or trade or sell that are also subject to the regulation. So that's the first important step. The second important step, and this kind of refers to the requirement for their commodities or their products to be deforestation free, is to engage, if they don't already know where the raw materials come from for the products that they're using or trading, they should engage with their supply chains basically to understand where the raw materials come from and to get further information so that they can really map their supply chains and have a better idea of what the risks of deforestation are likely to be. The third important point is companies should evaluate really their own systems. their policies, their operations, and benchmark those against the text of the regulation and the requirements of the regulation to see where there may be gaps or where they need to strengthen their systems. So Preferred by Nature has been providing advisory services to organizations for a number of years now to help them with their sourcing challenges, whether that's due to market pressures or regulatory requirements like the EU Deforestation Regulation. And different ways that we're supporting companies, I could give a few. Firstly, we are already supporting companies to prepare for the regulation, still, even though it won't come into force, and then be applicable to these companies for another couple of years. So in providing training services, capacity building, supporting companies to understand their operations and where they may need to strengthen their operations in relation to the deforestation regulation. Thirdly, for example, helping companies to strengthen their policies and their procedures around different aspects of the regulation, whether that's the due diligence aspect, specifically risk assessment, or looking at how they will mitigate risks that they're likely to find within their supply chains. So we're helping companies to benchmark certification schemes to understand how well, for example, those certification schemes meet the requirements in the deforestation regulation.